Well, Tricia, should we get started?
Let's get started. I'll start by sharing the results of the poll. Let's see, we're almost at 50-50, a little bit higher for yes, or for no than yes, with 46% wearing slippers today. Very important.
Yeah. Nice. And your sanity savers were great. Like I said earlier, mine is walking. I get to about 5 o'clock and I go out the door and I go as far away from home as possible. And I have a real strong walking neighborhood. So mostly my neighbors are out a lot too. So it's nice to see them. The snow has caused a little problem with that though. Hopefully we're done with that after today.
Yeah, we'll start by just introducing ourselves. My name is Tricia Wright, and I am an independent consultant working with nonprofits on strategy and fundraising. I'm also a member of the board of the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and along with Marit, we're both on the membership committee that organized this event today.
So, and I'm Marit Mechels. I am the Corporate and Foundation Gift Officer at Washburn Center for Children. Washburn is one of the largest providers of mental health for children in the Twin Cities. Last year we saw over 3,000 kiddos and their families who are, experiencing depression, anxiety, behavior, mostly towards because of trauma and toxic stress. So we had talked in our membership meeting for AFP about just casually about messaging and what we were doing for messaging. And I know that I was feeling like the messaging was changing, if not every day, every week. And we were just shifting and pivoting and trying to describe what we were doing and what our need was, and it was almost mind-boggling and took a lot of energy. And so when we were talking about having a get-together, we decided that was something that we wanted to kind of kick off with, is talking about messaging and how we want to do, or how we're doing that. I think Tricia is going to be kind of our guru here on the meeting and manage everything, which I appreciate because I'm new to this. So I'm just trying to figure this all out. Hopefully I will not log off in the middle of the meeting or anything else crazy. So Tricia, do you want to explain to everybody?
Yeah, so the goal of this gathering is to bring together fundraisers that are responsible for developing communications and messaging with donors about the current situation with COVID-19. And it's really to create a space where we can all connect and provide support. Rather than having like an expert panel, we are today hoping to rely on our expertise in our virtual room here. And, we're informal here. We're asking that you just think of this as a gathering to share and participate rather than, be in an education session where you have an expert in the front of the room. Because some people have requested this, some people couldn't make it, and we're gonna record our conversation so that we could share it with people there was someone who wrote to me and said that she was running an errand for her elderly parent and needed to miss our meeting, but we just want to make sure that we're inclusive of people in this difficult time and share this with them. Let's see, if you're comfortable, we like using video when you're talking so that we can see each other. Since we have a larger group here today, we're planning to keep people muted unless they're talking, just so that we don't talk over each other, and so we can hear each other the best. And we'll start out with some questions that Marit and I developed, and we'll go through each question, and then we're asking that people use the chat as much as you want to type in comments and questions, and also use the raise your hand function, which you can see, I believe if you collect the participants, button view participants, you should be able to it pulls up a window which has a button called raise your hand. It will call on people. You can also just type it into the chat function, and we'll be monitoring that and helping to pull people's comments out and ask people to share a little bit more. Let's see. At about 4:10, we're going to open it up to your questions and comments, and we'll ask that you share them in the chat, and we'll read off the questions that are coming together and work from there. And Marit, is there anything else we should share before we go ahead and move into the questions that we prepared?
No, just basically that we're pretty informal with this. This is really about you guys bringing information forward. This isn't about Tricia and I really teaching anything, or it's about sharing. So definitely raise your hands, use the chat. So raise your hands because I don't want to read the chat to y'all. But yeah, it's really trying to be interactive with a large group. I think we have a large group today because everybody's searching to connect. Feels really isolating for me, I think, to be at home. I miss my team, I miss the rest of the staff at the organization, and bouncing ideas off people. So this is a way to kind of do that connecting. As we get to the end, our email, my email, and Tricia's email will be out there. Feel free to send us, let us know what you want to talk about. We can set these up, and who would be good people to talk and share. Because I think this is going to be a great way for us to do learnings and connecting through AFP. Okay, so
Marit, I think the first thing we wanted to do is launch that second poll. Yep. So I'll go ahead and launch it. And in this poll, we're asking you to share with us the communication methods that you've been using to reach out to donors and funders during this time, and you can select more than one answer.
And we're just hoping to get a sense of what people are doing right now. I think it also really depends on what your position is, who you're dealing with. Doing a lot of personal calls, I see, email updates. I'll tell you, I'll start off, and then I hope somebody else will raise their hand and talk about how they're communicating right now with their donors. I have corporate and foundation portfolio, and so I've been reaching out to grant officers. And the way I've been doing it is I start with an email, letting them know what's happening at Washburn and asking for some time to talk further. And I have to say that people have been super responsive. They've really made the time to talk, and they've been getting back to me within 24, 48 hours, and I've had some really good conversations with donors that way. There's always a few of them that I send emails out and I don't get any kind of response, but that always happens. I think one of the questions I have is, with personal calls, do you email people first or do you make the call directly? So Tricia, I see a couple people with their hands raised. Do you want to?
Yeah, so yeah, let's go ahead with Cynthia. Let's see. Hold on, let me just, I lost you.
Can you find her with everybody there?
Yes. Oh, wait. There we go. Gotcha.
So I think I've been playing with this. In my case, I'm working with, we have two sides to our organization. The membership side, though, I've been actually emailing first, and then my whole plan was to follow up the phone call. Now, I am in transition, so I did mark personal phone calls, but they've been a little bit wonky because I can forward my phone, but when I call out, it looks like a cell phone, and then my 718 New York number looks suspicious to people. So I'm kind of we're working on some options and getting some other like tech through the phone, you know, the computer and Teams programming and stuff. But I actually found, but before all this happened, that the email then reach out, you know, and that way they had it in front of them. It wasn't coming out. You know, I told them in the email I was going to be calling them, you know, so I did tell them I was going to be calling them and tried to do it within 2 weeks. Give them some time to look at it. That's what I was doing.
Mhm. Thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think those were really good points. I've converted to using my cell phone. I don't know if that's common with you guys. I hadn't been using my cell phone before, but it was just easier than doing a phone forward. So I've started using my cell phone, my personal cell phone. At some point we'll have to get that all worked out.
Let's see. Alyssa has got her hand up too. I'm going to unmute you and you can share a little bit more what you're doing.
Sure. Hi, everyone. It's great to see all these friendly faces. I know we're all kind of in the same boat together. I'm going to actually say the opposite of Cynthia, which is good to note that we all have different ways depending on the tools that we have. I actually found that calling people first just for that like high touch experience, even if all I was doing was leaving a voicemail and then following up with an email was working well for us. I'm in a little bit of a different situation in that a lot of my funders and donors already use my cell phone, so I didn't have quite the same barriers that other people do with like trying to forward your office phone and all of that. But I just think we're all so craving to be in contact with people that I think reaching out in a number of different ways right now is working well. I struggle a little bit with like what's an acceptable follow-up time frame in this world where everything's changing so fast. You know, a normal would be, right, you send an email, you wait a week, and then you politely follow up. But in this world, I'm struggling with what's a reasonable amount of time when, especially in fundraising, we're all desperately trying to fill our own organization gaps and then serve our clients as well and what those needs are. So I think that's the thing that I maybe stumble over a little more is it too aggressive if I'm following up within 24 hours, whereas I would have maybe normally given it a week.
That's a good question. Are others finding that they're following up more quickly than they would have before?
I know for me, I really feel a sense of urgency. So I'm moving very quickly with donors very fast and trying to do that first level of connection with all my existing donors and moving really quick because right now donors are making decisions about their funding. And so I want to make sure that they know exactly what we're seeing as needs out there. Anybody else?
May I join in?
Yep.
I put up, but so we are having every week we're having Zoom calls with supporters to discuss. So I work for an organization that focuses on nonviolence. So we're discussing nonviolent actions that people can take each week. And this week we're doing our last one, but it gives us a good opportunity to call people to invite them to it. And then we're focusing more on phone calls as well because our acknowledgements aren't going out as fast since we're only collecting the mail once a week. So we're calling to thank people as soon as we can. And then also a couple people were like wanted their tax receipt. So to let them know that it's going to take a little longer. given the circumstances.
Mhm.
And it also, like for our biggest supporters, like not just monetarily, but like our volunteers, and just calling them to see how they're doing. And it's also helpful to know because I know certain people have lost income, people are practicing medicine, or might have family members who are sick. So
Mhm.
That's a good point. Has anybody dealt with a situation where they reached out to a donor that has a family member sick or sick themselves? I know that we had one major donor that a gift officer called and was struggling with pneumonia. And does that affect your message, Paul? Or
we have, like the one person I'm thinking of, she's a doctor, and her husband had COVID. He was put in the hospital there in New York, but I think she really appreciated that people cared how she was doing. And also, I know not to ask her for a gift right now because it's a really bad time for her.
Mhm. Looks like we have a few more people who have raised their hands. I think Martha was next. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Martha.
Yeah, hi everybody. So just very briefly, I wanted to share that I'm really kicking it old school. I mean, let's face it, everyone's home.
Mhm.
So it's all phone calls all the time. And I've only had one person say, no, you really don't need to call me again. And the way that I'm following up is I'm saying, well, you know, I'm probably going to call you again in about a week to 10 days to see how you're doing, to see what's going on. And like I said, of all the people I've called, I've only had one person say no, thank you. People, they seem to really appreciate the calls. If there's been some specific thing that the donor or prospect has brought up that I can follow up with email, I've done that. But really, I mean, I've just found and really I am worn out at the end of the day. I can't remember the last time I made so many calls and had so many people answer the phone.
Mhm.
But it's
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
you know, that's been how I've been doing it.
Mhm. Yeah, I've been hearing a lot of people are answering, you know, a lot of people have been answering phones. A lot of people have shared that. I also just had in the comment section in the chat, Lara shared that she emailed her board members before she called them so that they had her cell number. And so they knew it was her when they called later. And I think that's a great practice to do with donors or board members. Just let them know it's coming. Yeah, so that maybe solved, Cindy, your problem of having the New York area code when you're calling people. Yeah, maybe not. Yeah. All right, thanks for sharing. Let's see. Alicia, do you want to share a little bit? I'm going to unmute you.
Sure. So we've been doing phone calls. That was kind of like the first thing that we started doing, was doing phone calls to our major donors to check on them and see how they were doing, which we have gotten a really, really great response at. And actually, there's been major donors that we haven't had to even like make that formal ask of after making these calls, because it just served not just as a way for us to get in touch with them and, you know, show that real concern for them that we have, because we've, you know, they've been in a relationship with us for years, but also just kind of reassure them too that we're still here and that we're still focused on our mission as well. And that's been really reassuring. And then we've also been sending out a weekly update from our president, because like I worked for a Catholic school, so those have gotten a lot of really good response too.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's see. We've got Lara.
I think Paul too.
Oh, Paul too. Yeah, well, we can do Lara first and then Paul. Oh wait, hang on. I'll unmute. Lara, are you there? All right, we're gonna go. I think it's cutting out a bit, so we're gonna go to Paul.
And if you can hear me, I really was just raising my hand thinking about the question about have any of our donors had experience with coronavirus. And I've actually found the most response. So Beacon Interfaith, we have 18 buildings with 600 apartment units, and we had our first confirmed case of coronavirus for one of our residents. And to share that has been a really incredible, like, bring it home for folks. Like, this is serious, and it's impacting people in the lowest socioeconomic rungs of our community, yeah, and it's significant for them. So that's where we've been focusing our crisis communications, at least in one small part of being able to show the reality of this to our mission.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing.
And Paul, are you letting your donors know? You're letting your donors know that there's been a confirmed.
We are. We're not sharing the building, or certainly not the resident or anything like that, but recognizing that it's important for folks to see that this is a real life situation and crisis, and it's impacting individuals and families, and for our clientele, it's particularly dangerous for those who are homeless or precariously housed. And when your public health strategy is to go home and stay home, it doesn't work very well for folks who don't have a safe one. So we were able to communicate that message, and really ask people to certainly recognizing their situations, because everyone's in different levels of crisis here, but asking them to still sign on, lean in, and support our work as we respond to this in our own particular mission.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things that we really wanted to think about was innovation. Do you have any creative adaptations or interesting ideas that have emerged from your fundraising communications at this time? I love the fact that somebody said they're using video. And video from your leader, your executive director. That's interesting. I know we're using it a lot internally, but we haven't used it much externally yet.
All right, Chelsea, go ahead. Let's see.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. So I work at an independent school, the Blake School, which is in Hopkins and Minneapolis and in Minnetonka. And so we work a lot with alumni. And so what we have done is we have class representatives for different alumni classes. And we have asked those representatives to reach out to their classmates and do kind of Zoom meetings or chats with their classmates. So it's not just necessarily coming from the staff at the Blake School, but getting the community, the greater community involved, and just saying, hey, we're here with you if you want to talk. Let's set up a Zoom chat for our class to get reconnected.
Mm-hmm. And you've had a good participation with that? Have a lot of classes stepped up?
We definitely have gotten a lot of emails back that said, I'm excited to reach out to my class. Other classes have said, yeah, we're already setting something up. So it's something that just really went out yesterday. So we're already getting emails back about people being interested in doing it and taking part, which is, I think, a good sign, especially at this time.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. Yeah, I think using the virtual connection ways, like to video with a group of people that have an affinity, makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Eileen, I love your comment in the chat that you're paying program participants to share their own experience and post these online. I know that's always a challenge to figure out how to tell those stories. The fact that you're giving back and you're valuing those stories and letting people know that's really interesting.
Yeah, Eileen, can you share more?
Yeah, I got a couple of messages to me directly too. So we at Genesis Works Twin Cities work with young professionals, so they may be in high school or college or beyond. They're very low income and they are hit hard. So whereas many of us are getting benefits from the federal government or from the state because, you know, we're working through ours, they're actually in this very unusual space. So we've pivoted our programming to provide a big online component to do learning like certifications. But the big part here is the being guest authors. So we're giving anyone who doesn't have the ability to do their internship remotely the opportunity to write a guest blog. And that's time on our end too, though, right? Where we have to also help to edit a lot of that. But it's been really helpful, and we can share that with different partners in different ways. It's an opportunity for them to have professional development. And even if we don't post it broadly to the majority of folks, it's really helpful. And we can also, like with our letter that goes, we have little email appeals, they're targeted communications, they're very specific, they're going to different niches. We can also just plug one in here. So if we have someone working at Medtronic, we can plug that in as we're reaching out to the Medtronic team and so forth. So it's just, it's helping us further our mission, because our goal is to allow our young professionals to use their own talents to rise out of poverty. And it's just opening the door to opportunity.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Had you done that before this, or is this something that kind of originated out of this crisis?
We had worked with partners like the Women's Press of Minnesota and a couple other places like ethnic groups, ethnic publications. I started this last year saying, why don't you allow our folks to be guest authors? But we hadn't really had it at this level of like, let's put 2 of them online at least, and let's pay everyone ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So in this way, us putting the money and really sharing what they're doing on our website is new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, it's just interesting how this period is kind of fueling some of these creative ideas and new ways that, you know, you can't do the old ways, so you have to be innovative and flexible. Let's just see. We've got some more hands. Tim, you've had your hand raised. I'll unmute you here.
Thanks, Tricia. You know, I think it feels to me like there's it's pretty obvious probably, but I think there's a theme, and the theme is, how is it appropriate for your organization to be real with your donors and your volunteers today? Mm-hmm. I've got 2 clients, and I think, Paul, you touched on it, and in the way you spoke about the coronavirus being in one of the residencies, is that I've got a client who is, they do medically approved healthy meals and deliver. They make them and deliver. They had to cancel their event, $500,000. They have an increase of about 40% of their cost currently. They're anticipating to be another $500,000 more. So they're $1 million away. They didn't apologize because they've had 30 and 40% increases in number of people that need their services, and it's real for them. And they've been just really upfront and aggressive about telling their donors, and they've got an amazing response. The other one is a music organization, and they're just flat out seeing music as a way of calming and entertaining people during this time. So they've been online very directly bringing their mission, not asking, but bringing their mission right directly to people. And students some of their students, young students, being a part of that. And I think that what that's doing is just continuing to make that mission frontal to that donor group and even prospective donors. And I think that's, so where, answering the question of where can you be as real today with what your mission is and where it applies. I mean, it's logical, but I think sometimes we just assume that people know, and I think this is the time you need to really step back and figure that out and how you can be real to them right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like this idea Alicia mentioned again. Alicia, you want to share more about your comment in the chat? Sorry, you'll have to unmute yourself. Yeah. All right, well, let's see. Oh, there you are. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, I work for a Catholic school, and one of the things that we just recently did, like last week, I think, no, week before last, we decided that we were going to kind of do a return to something that they used to do when it was just one school and we hadn't expanded out to the 3, which was to have prayer cards for the different students. And all that they are, I can actually show you because I have them all here on my desk. They just kind of like look like this. They just have a student and their name on it, and then there was a little prayer that the priest over the entire academy kind of came up with or looked up or something, and it was printed on the back. And we had sent out an email blast to everyone who has ever been a supporter, like ever, and said, that we understand that these are really hard times and that the students that we serve are some of the hardest hit. And we know that we would just really appreciate your prayers at this time for these students. If you would be willing to receive a prayer card for a student, please click this link. And so that's what we did, and we had like a really great response. And so, since I'm the one that has all of the prayer cards, I'm sending out some like every day, writing little notes on them, thanking that person for agreeing to pray for one of these scholars and for being a supporter of the schools. And on the form they select like which school they wanted to receive a prayer card from. And so thanking them for just being involved and being part of the community and just sending those out.
So, Alicia, is there any kind of ask with that? Or
no.
To donate?
No, not right now. We're kind of, what we've been doing, because we have our spring appeal that's going out this week and next week. So we were our strategy has been to kind of like build the road to that. So first with like calling and checking in on all of our major donors, sending out an email once a week to everybody on our email newsletter list with updates on the schools and how the academy is doing, and just keeping everyone informed. That way we can like lead up to everything kind of culminates in our spring appeal that's going out this week and next.
I see Nate put in a comment in chat that they're getting a lot of iPads in kind. Are those mostly coming from corporations? And are they the iPads themselves, or are they money to buy the iPads?
We're getting a few donations from families of residents of the iPads themselves, but primarily we're still seeking funding and trying to figure out how to do that, looking at grants and how we're going to make that ask. We had our spring appeal that was planned to go out, I believe, this week, and that's been pushed back. So we're working on getting the funding for that. A lot of what we're getting are face masks. Our residents are sewing them for the staff and for each other, and so that's been really cool. We got a lot of fabric, and we even upstairs in our office have a team that's sewing on their breaks and stuff to help make a face mask for everybody.
That's neat. Yeah, we're having some chatter in the chat about the spring appeals, and people have mentioned that too, and how, how are you changing your spring appeals? Like Nate, you just mentioned you're postponing it a little bit. I'm assuming that's maybe because you need to make it more relevant to what's going on. Is that true? Yeah.
Sorry, that's a big part of it. We definitely changed the wording, and then for older adults who's our primary constituents and primary donors, it's an even scarier time. So just being aware of that and how we're going to make those asks and interactions. So we're doing a lot of great things on that, and we're excited. I think we've got it worded very well. It's just timing it right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'd be interested, because I deal with corporate and foundations. I felt in the last week a little bit of a pullback from foundations because of the payroll protection program and the small business loans, and that feeling that they're stepping back a little bit to let government see what the government's going to do for people. Is anybody else getting that feeling that people are doing a wait and see? Let's see, Elsa.
Let's see, Emily, just go ahead, Emily. Yeah, I can.
Hey, Marit, I just unmuted myself. I also work in the grants realm, and we do food and housing. So we've been inundated with emergency grant requests. What I'm seeing more is that funders already have more asks than they can fill. So they're starting to close emergency grants and emergency funding. Not so much necessarily, we haven't gotten any comments because of the payroll protection loan.
Thanks for sharing, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's true. They're getting a lot of inundation right now. I'm just looking at some of the comments in the chat, going back to the spring appeal. Question from Zach, is anyone promoting or sharing out changes in charitable deduction from the CARES Act to donors? Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talking about doing this. Important to include the fact that, as an individual, you get an above the line deduction of $300 from your taxable adjusted gross income, or $600 for a couple, and that could be something helpful to include if you can weave it into the appeal.
Yeah. I think let's go to some people have their hands raised. I think, yes. Amy, you've been waiting for a while. Let me see, can I unmute her?
Yep. Yes, you can. She can unmute herself too.
Hi.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually was going to comment on something else, but I have a question. I was wondering if our strategy right now is kind of to ask people to give early, because we don't know if the stocks are going to get worse later in the year. Also, if they can, to make a pledge or set up a monthly gift so we have steady revenue. We have to, because like our largest grants come from institutional donors like the Dutch Embassy, and they've said they're not signing contracts right now until they see what's happening with COVID-19. And so, yeah, we have to look at our individual people for support. I was wondering if other people are asking for gifts earlier or doing those other things.
Great question. Yeah, and this is our time to kind of transition over to your questions. But as I guess, just to follow up from Amy's comment, has anyone decided to move the timeline up from maybe their end of the year? Is that what you're kind of getting at, Amy? End of the year, like bumping it up?
Because I know there has been some concern among different staff, like if we ask early now, are we going to be short? But like one person said, a bird in the hand is better than four in the bush.
Right. And I think from my point of view is, yeah, people want to do something, and we're giving them that opportunity to do something right now. And I think you have to do this right now and do the ask right now, and then see where things are fourth quarter. Hopefully foundations hopefully incorporate, well, foundations specifically will hopefully give more than 5%, and we'll give multiple gifts, and that's kind of our hope, that later they'll still give.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we go and give Paul a chance? Paul, you've had your hand up. Oh,
Paul, I'll go ahead and unmute you, Paul. There you go.
Thank you.
I think I had raised that hand earlier. But the two different questions that I was thinking about. So Beacon actually did receive the PPP and received notice of that earlier this last week. And we've been making it very clear that, like, just being as open as possible. I mean, we're presenting ourselves as a responsible, like, looking in every single corner for ways to respond to this crisis, and that PPP grant forgivable loan is an incredible gift. I mean, it's an incredible support at about $500,000 for our organization. And yet, as Tim had said earlier, I mean, a lot of our organizations are $1 million in the hole because of this. And so it's yet another opportunity for us to say, like, we've been given this incredible support and we need more, and are asking people to join in that, recognizing that we do have additional expenses and lost revenue as a result of what's going on right now. And then I was also in that very same vein, I work in major gifts, and I'm asking every single one of the people in my portfolio for a special COVID gift. So as far as, are we moving gift requests up? We certainly are in our organization. It's absurd in that, like, we're doing a year's worth of work in about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what a lot of us are working through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a few people have talked about, their events and moving their fundraisers to a virtual format. And I think it's probably worth Marit spending a little bit of time on it. I know we do plan to potentially organize another one of these chats that's more specifically focused on people encountering that situation and deciding whether to move their events virtual. But enough people have commented now through the chat and in my email box, so I want to make sure to see if anyone has good ideas about moving events from in-person to virtual.
And then I think there's Alicia asks about a golf tournament, and for some of us, golf tournaments, ours is 25 years old and raises $200,000, but is it the right time for golf? And we pushed from June to August, and hopefully August is a good time. I'm not a golfer, so it doesn't interest me, but I think golfers will be ready to be out and about in August, so hopefully it'll still go. Love to know if anybody's planning virtual or done virtual. It feels like it hasn't been enough time to really get those off the ground yet. Let's see. Somebody have their hands raised? Do we have some?
Emily, do you want your hand raised still? No, she's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, Zach, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can say, we've pivoted and very quickly put together, we're part of a chapter of a larger national organization. So we've teamed up with, like 20 other chapters, and we're doing one giant national virtual event instead of, all of our individual walks. And we're just moving very, very quickly, and, we're going to host it in about a month. So, I don't know what the impact's going to be, but we wanted to do something, and we didn't feel like just postponing everything was the right direction, that we wanted to put something in place, some way for people to, we know that there's the fundraising part of the event, but there's also the, engaging the community and keeping people connected part. And we really wanted to preserve some part of that for the spring. So we're hoping it's going to work out.
So when is is it the same day as the in-person was supposed to be, or?
So we all had sort of different dates around May. So we're going to do it May 9th. And we just sort of chose the average date. And we just felt like we could combine our resource, if we're going to do something virtual, it would be better if we combined our resources and just had more minds and, connections together to try to put on one really great event instead of a few smaller, mediocre events.
Is there anything like that you're doing to try to engage people, bring some of those special elements from an in-person event into a virtual setting?
Yeah, some different parts, definitely we're trying to do some virtual exercise pieces, knowing that was, part of the benefit of having a, sort of walk-based event. We're, still building a lot of the pieces out for it, but trying to get, as someone was mentioning earlier, having people record little videos of themselves to get hyped up for it, trying to train groups on how to set up watch parties through Zoom. So that they can, maintain sort of the community aspect too, and trying to just help people navigate that space. Also that we, work with a much older population. So doing some of that tech guidance, is becoming really essential.
What about table captains? Like Zach, I'm putting you on the spot, but if other people have comments on this, if you had an event that had table captains, like, how are you keeping them engaged if you go virtual? And like, are you keeping that format?
Yeah, we do use that sort of format. And yeah, I've been doing, really leaning on the personal outreach piece and really, really spending a lot of my time just connecting with all those people individually and giving them as many tools as possible. Yeah, so we are keeping that. We're going to actually do, I'm putting together right now some like virtual happy hours for those folks to keep them engaged too. I haven't done one yet, so we'll see how they go. I'm hoping people will want to stay engaged that way.
Yeah, great.
So there was a really nice ask that I'm kind of curious about in chat about AFP-MN and the May 1st through 8 week. And then I think there's also going to be a national push on Giving Tuesday. They're going to do during that week too. Are people participating? I know I'm kind of feeling like, you have to, but we tried to get our ass out there now in advance, so that people have been asked by us for a couple times before that week. The hard part is there's so much publicity and marketing around that week around AFP-MN that it's hard to not participate, or at least have that option for people.
I think I was just going to add that because our spring appeal is going on right now through May, we'll probably just incorporate it and use the same materials, post them on the AFP-MN site during that period, and that way if people see us, that we have that consistent message, and maybe incorporate some of the AFP-MN pieces into the email communications we're doing.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, I think that makes sense. A lot of people already have, appeals going out around this time. And so if you have a big campaign, it might be a way of like incorporating it, or rather than having two separate big things like back to back.
I know I received an appeal from the Friends of the Hennepin County Library, and they had their letter. It was actually like a week and a half ago. So they had their letter pretty much already done before COVID, and they just did an insert that was a little bit bigger than bookmark, probably 3 by 6, that they just included in the direct mail to kind of talk about the changes and how it's affecting people. and their response to it. And I thought that was a nice piece. Got it.
The same email, yeah.
Your inspiration file. Yeah.
Sitting right here on my desk.
Yeah.
I love how people are sharing things in the video. That's awesome. Yeah. Paul had a question earlier that he posed in the chat, which was, are you experiencing any pushback from anyone in your organization about making solicitations during this time?
I just changed jobs and I'm with a different organization, but I will share that my previous organization was very much more cautious and kind of holding back from making asks, worried about fatigue and things like that with donors. And kind of at the board level, even there's like a cautiousness with it. I think in part it was because operations had to be shut down in a large part. And so there was a, hesitancy on how to do that, but it can be, I think it can be a real concern for nonprofits if you don't have that interest and support from leadership and from the board.
Mm-hmm.
I can share one more thing is it okay to speak, Marit? So I'm new at my organization, and in the early days, we are definitely fundraising now, but in the early days, there was some question around it just the first few days. And so I had the luxury of spending some time thinking about it and researching it, and had a lot of research. If someone wants to reach out to me personally, there's a whole, and maybe some of you have seen this, websites devoted to crisis fundraising and why you should do it. And like a lot of national leaders talking about why you should at this time. You shouldn't. You should be clear about what you want to fundraise for and unabashed about it, and why it's an important time to step up. So it's just some really good resources and great quotes and stuff I'm happy to share. If someone wants to send me a private email or just in the chat.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're coming up towards 4:30. Is there any burning questions that somebody wants to pose to the group that we haven't thought of yet? Just raise your hand at this point and we'll unmute you, and that's a good thing.
Well, people are thinking about that. I'm just glad to hear there wasn't a lot of people being like, oh yeah, my organizations are telling me not to ask. So that's positive, because I think what Zach put in the chat is right, that, it's good. It's important to be tactful in how you're making the ask, but folks are really still some folks are in the place where they can and they want to give, and they want to give generously. All right. Well, as we're wrapping up here, we just wanted to say thanks to everyone for coming today. And we really appreciate your time and sharing. I'm going to pull up our contact information now, hang on, and so that you can share any feedback that you might have on today, and let us know what other topics you might want to hear, because we will organize more of these events, and we want to be making sure that these are the topics that are most relevant and meaningful for you. Let's see.
Yeah, I think it was a great conversation. I really appreciate you guys, and I really appreciate the grace that you provided me in being new to all this and hosting. I really appreciate that. I know somebody made a comment about breakout rooms. I think we'll get there. It just is going to take us a little learning to figure that all out.
But it is good to know that, there are breakout rooms within Zoom, and thinking about that if you're hosting events for your organization, that you could, break your table captains out with their people. I think that was the comment. Yeah, it's an interesting tip. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Well, feel free to contact us if you have any more questions or feedback or topics for us to consider. And we just really appreciate the chance to connect with all of you people here and learn more about the innovation and interesting work that you're all doing. So thanks for coming today.